Today's video is on using an oil pressure gauge to measure oil pressure in a vehicle. This is an oil pressure socket. It's used for oil pressure sending units. You can see that there's multiple different sizes inside of it, so it is different than just a regular deep socket. The oil pressure sending unit on this is located above the oil filter, which is on the front of the block. You can see the switch here, or sending unit wire. It's a single wire attached to it. We're going to remove the connector and then remove the oil pressure sending unit. The connector is just a regular blade type. And there's the oil pressure sending unit. To install the gauge, once we've removed the oil pressure sending unit, we're going to make sure that we have the right adapter to thread into the block. It will go in first, and then we will attach our gauge to the adapter, making sure that all of the fittings are in fact tight so that we don't have any leaks. We will push the gauge up through the top, mount it out of the way of any of the rotating components of the engine, and then start and measure the pressure on the gauge. Here you can see the adapter and the gauge itself coming off of the block just above the oil filter on the front of the engine. Here's our snap-on oil pressure gauge. You can see that there are two different measurements for pressure. In this case it's PSI as well as kPa. From the top looking down, you can see the cord coming out of the block. The brass fitting sits there right into the block, up, and I'm going to mount it to the front so that we're able to monitor it and keep it away from the rotating assemblies of the engine. Here's the gauge. What I'm going to do now is head inside of the vehicle, start the car, and we'll be able to see what the oil pressure is at idle, as well as seeing how it reacts to when I open the throttle. The vehicle has now started, and you can see the oil pressure rises up. Right now we're at about 45 to 50 psi at idle. I'm going to actuate the throttle with my hand. I can reach in the backside of the motor and actually open and close the throttle a little bit, replicating what I would be doing with my accelerator pedal. So you can see the oil pressure moving now as throttle increases. Pressure has gone up to about 55 psi, and then back down to when I close the throttle body. When done, shut the engine off, and then reference this to the specifications for the vehicle to make sure that the oil pressure is within the operating range. To undo this, we simply reverse the procedure, pull the gauge out, pull the fitting out, reinstall the oil pressure sending unit, torque to spec, and make sure to hook up the electrical connection as well.